Since there currently is not a definition for a veterinarian office in the ordinance, and a veterinarian office is considered by the staff as being similar to clinics and offices that may provide emergency services when their facilities are not generally open. In addition, the village zoning ordinance currently does not allow for office hours for veterinarian emergency services. On November 12, 2007, the Plan Commission adopted Resolution 07-29 to request the staff to evaluate regulations related to the veterinarian offices and emergency veterinarian services in the B2 district. The ordinance amendments include creating the following definitions for veterinarian offices and veterinarian emergency service offices in section 420-152. The first definition, veterinarian office, to be an office or clinic that provides examinations, diagnosis, and treatment, including surgical care for animals. A veterinarian office excludes facilities for boarding animals or facilities for the cremating of animals. The second definition is a veterinarian emergency services office, which we define as an office or clinic that provides examinations, diagnosis, and treatment, including surgical care for animals available 24 hours per day. A veterinarian emergency service office excludes facilities for the boarding of animals or facilities for the cremating of animals. The ordinance amendments propose to allow the emergency service office with the approval of a conditional use permit in the B2 district. Therefore, section 420-119D2C is proposed to be created. Also, section 450-119K1 is proposed to be amended to allow a veterinarian emergency service office to be open 24 hours a day with the approval of a valid conditional use permit. And finally, section 420-148B 120.1, related to specific standards for conditional use permits for veterinary emergency service offices, is proposed to be created to allow the village to require additional security requirements for such use. The Village Plan Commission held a public hearing to consider all of these amendments to the zoning text and recommended approval, as does the staff, to all of these amendments.
Gene, do we have veterinary emergency services now in the village? We have two veterinary offices.
You mean after hours?
After hours.
Only on an on-call basis, and then basically what will happen is the veterinarian, if you have an emergency with a pet, will meet you specifically at their office if they need to administer some type of medicine or procedure. But there are no standard hours of operation for emergency services.
Do either of the veterinary offices that we have now offer cremation services for the animals?
No.
Would we allow them?
It's not my recommendation.
Okay.
I think when this first came up, they said that service was provided by somebody else.
Correct.
So it's not something that would be done. Steve?
Yeah, Gene, I got a little problem with the question about that they provide the surgery in emergency. Many times the animal, with the practice surgery, they perform surgery, it have to remain in the premises. So it doesn't emergency service. I cannot be taken off for no reason. What do I do? I had a case happen to me, and I'm going to Springbrook, Silver Spring in Milwaukee, sent by one of the emergency service right here in Kenosha.
I'm not aware that either of our vets will provide emergency surgeries on animals in the middle of the evening or in the middle of the night. I'm not sure if they will do that or not.
So, I don't know, I got a problem with that.
Well, just a correction here. Steve, I think you're asking a question as to whether or not they can keep the animal overnight. That's provided for after the surgery.
Yes. Under this ordinance, they will be able to have hours, and they'll be able to provide them. The difference is they're not going to be boarding the animals when people go on vacation or extended periods of time.
Okay.
It is acceptable for them to have the animal overnight or for a short period of time after surgery.
Okay, that's what I was concerned. I misunderstood that part.
They're kept in kennels at the
Yes, they do.
facilities.
It's not only surgery, but if you give them such a drug as a heartworm, medication for the heartworms, then they have to be monitored, so they're kept there and somebody keeps checking on the animal, make sure there's not a reaction, so it's just a common practice among the veterinarian offices.
I move for approval of ordinance 07-58.
A second.
Motion by Monica, second by Clyde. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carries. That moves us to item J, that is receive the planning commission recommendation to consider ordinance number 07-59 to amend sections 420-123D, 420-124D. This is the village zoning ordinance to allow plastic materials, synthetic resins, synthetic rubber, and synthetic and other man-made fibers and products as permitted in the M1 and M2 districts. Gene?
Mr. President, members of the board, on November 19th, 2007, the board approved a resolution 07-79 to initiate a zoning text amendment for the village to reevaluate the provisions related to plastic materials and synthetic resins, synthetic rubber, and synthetic and other man-made fibers and products, and to examine if such uses may be considered as permitted uses in the M1 and M2 zoning districts. Currently, the storage or manufacturing of plastic materials or synthetic resins, synthetic rubber, and synthetic and other man-made fibers and products are allowed currently only with a conditional use permit in the M2 heavy manufacturing district. The village has, over the last several years, 15-20 years, has approved several such conditional uses for such companies such as Pepsi America, PPC Industries, Rare Pacific, CPI Plastics, Parker Plastics, Iris USA, and Sonopress, and many others, because they all store these types of materials or they manufacture these types of materials on site. All of these uses are protected by ESFR system, an early suppression fast response fire protection system, as required by NFPA regulations and the Wisconsin Rural Commercial Building Code. These fire suppression requirements, as set forth in NFPA regulations, will provide for the proper protection, health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. In addition, any use in the village does need to go through the village's site and operational plan provisions, whether it's an administrative review by the staff or a full review and approval by the village plan commission. So any use that does come into the village still has the requirement to go through a thorough review by each of the department heads, including the fire department, to make sure that all health, safety, and welfare action items are being taken prior to any occupancy. The staff and the plan commission recommend approval that these uses can be considered as permitted uses within the M1 and the M2 district as presented.
So move to approve ordinance 07-59.
Second. Motion by Steve, second by Clyde for approval of ordinance 07-59. Further comment or questions from board members? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carries. Moves us to item K, and that is to receive the planning commission recommendation, consider ordinance number 07-60 and 07-61 for an amendment to section 420-27A and B of the village zoning ordinance related to the zoning application fees, and to consider an amendment to section 395-87A and B of the village land division and development control ordinance related to application and development review fees.
Mr. President, on November 12th, 2007, the Plan Commission approved a resolution 07-28 to initiate a zoning text amendment to complete its annual evaluation of zoning fees. As part of that evaluation, the staff presented at a public hearing that the initial application fees for planning and zoning applications